Back in like 1987, I was reading these audiophile magazines, and they're saying things like how there's these CDs that were like quadraphonic, and they were so great. This Pink Floyd CD, and you know, like it took me a while to get CDs in the first place, and I still don't really understand how the specification worked for quadraphonic. But the topic of multi-channel audio has been a little bit of a fascination for me. So when you do have multi-channel audio, you need some sort of digital media and a player that supports the digital media that contains the multi-channel audio. So more than 2 channels, right? Like 4 channels, 8 channels. So the next problem is getting the audio to the receiver. And there's 2 main strategies for doing this. One is with analog cables, and the other is with a single digital link of some sort. In this case, this motherboard has the usual, you know, front set, back set, subwoofer center jacks on it. So sometimes surround hardware is just set up to accept these sort of connections, or in some cases these connections exist and there's like a 6-channel input mode, which is just like a straight up amp of whatever's coming in those 6 channels. So my sound card here has both, I guess, a digital out and those also audio lines. In this case, I'm choosing to use the audio lines because I can kind of pre-tweak the balance and the sound quality. And that's the problem when you send it to digital out, is that has to be done inside your receiver. And sometimes it isn't really, there isn't a lot of options for doing that. So there is a typical digital jack on a receiver, and I actually use that in my normal Linux operation just because I think it's sort of a better link than the analog link. So when sending multi-channel data through the coax connector, for example, the receiver has to support whatever the type of data is being sent. That's the multi-channel information. Again, I don't actually do that myself, so it isn't really a problem for me. So these days I'm kind of into using Linux for everything, and I realized that under Windows I had been using my Audigy and the KX project drivers to sort of pre-EQ for speakers. So basically you try to make your speakers in the monitors as best as possible by altering the frequency bands. And that worked okay. I found out, I was trying to look for ways to do that in Linux, and I found out that basically it has actually been done already, so I don't have to really do anything because, again, a lot of things in Linux are like that. Because it's easy effects, you can just add inline filters, and you can pre-EQ your output, and then that becomes very useful. So I've stopped running Windows VMs in Linux because it's sort of built in, and I free up resources in the system to not run a VM. So I wound up picking up the Pink Floyd material off of Internet Archive, and don't ask me why it's there and why it's legal, but I got it. Then I started using the Windows VM in Linux as if it were Windows, which I usually use to solve this problem. And what I have here is a bunch of system wave channels that get mixed together and then sent to analog output. So on the left-hand side, you have the sources in the system. The right-hand side, you have the output jacks on that DSP flowchart there. So again, in Linux already, they have some sort of VM thing that you can do PCI pass-through, which allows you to just share devices in your computer, hardware devices, to the VM. And that generally works, but in this case, these drivers were a little bit flaky, and they're really just flaky in the multi-channel driver. So I was using a 32-bit Windows originally, and it really had issues. It really malfunctioned in the 32-bit one, so I thought I'd install the 64-bit Windows to see if it went away, and it does generally go away, but sometimes when you start Windows, the multi-channel thing isn't working, and you have to kind of like reset. There's a place where you can like reset the device, and you do that a few times. It starts working, then it will work properly after that. So as I say, it's a little flaky, but it does work. When I'm using Windows in like non-multi-channel, what I do is my motherboard has an SDIF out that goes to the sound card. So Linux will play through its onboard, the motherboard's onboard sound card, and then it'll go into the VM sound card, and then it'll be routed to the actual output going to my receiver. So you hear both Linux and whatever's going on in Windows, and it goes through some EQs, but it's in this case Because you're using the digital in, you can't use a digital out for some reason. That's my understanding. So that actually goes out through one of the analog channels. So it's actually a DVD on my receiver.